Hey, YouTube believers. Chris Matt coming at you today with Batman, The Three Jokers. And right off the bat, pun intended, this book is kind of thick. This would definitely be around the size of like a collected trade. Now, just to kind of clarify, because a lot of people be like, oh, this is a graphic novel. Graphic novels are self-contained stories. So, for example, would be like Alan Moore's The Killing Joke or Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, because they were individual stories, like one-offs, essentially. So those are graphic novels. Now, collected trades will collect issues like 1 through however long, and then put it into something like this. So when you say Watchmen or V for Vendetta's a graphic novel, incorrect. They just do a lot of reprints of the collected trades. So just to kind of clarify that. Now, what kind of kills me with the Three Jokers is it's a cool concept, but man, it took forever to come out. If I remember correctly, the Three Joker concept, it was teased at the end of the Darkseid War during the New 52 in Justice League number 50. That was July of 2016. It was 4 years ago. Now, don't get me wrong. I know things happen, but I think what's kind of chapping my hide a little bit right here is because of how long it took for Doomsday Clock to come out after Rebirth. That was something else. Anyway, with all the ranting and raving out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in the book. The people responsible for this are, and this book is not easy to turn, so bear with me. This is Jeff Johns, the writing, Jason Fabuk doing the illustrations, Brad Anderson, the color artist, Rob Lay, letters, and there's the people that did the cover. There's the editors. And, of course, Batman was created by Bill Finger with Bob Kane. Now, bear with me as I hold the cover back. There we go. Now, this is cool, the way this opens up. It kind of has the paneling like Watchmen and sort of how Jeff Johns, and I think it was Fabuk that did Doomsday Clock as well, tried to mimic was, like the 6 panels here. So we just kind of see a W and lights coming at... And you can already tell it's Thomas Wayne. And then, boom, the Batmobile crashes into it. And we see an injured Bruce Wayne coming up on the Wayne estate. Just not caring if anybody knows who he is at this point, because he was severely injured. And then there's a saying here at the beginning that says, time heals all wounds if they don't kill you first. And so we get all these quiet moments kind of building up the scene. We see the cave. We see the trophy cases. And then we see Bruce being held by Alfred. And he's like, my parents. I'll fix their markers as soon as I fix you. And so you kind of see what a typical night for Alfred is. Bloodstains, suit being dropped, being surgically worked on. Now, this is where things start to get interesting because Alfred asks him, what was it this time? And so we see the Penguin and Umbrella. Now, this kind of reminds me of, I don't remember what book it's from. If you guys know, let me know down in the comments. But there's a piece by Alex Ross where Bruce is taking his shirt off like this, and you see all these scars. You see this tapestry, the story that each one tells, and it's just very well rendered. And of course, one thing I do want to express here is if the Three Joker concept was teased in the Darkseid Wars, and now this is being printed through the Black Label imprint, is this all of a sudden an Elseworld story, or is this going to have repercussions in the main Prime universe? So that's kind of what I'm wondering here, because Alfred is alive. So it's sort of like, wait a minute, Tom King needlessly killed Alfred in his story. And then Tomasi and, Tinian are doing their own thing, and now Jeff Johns has Alfred back, which I'm all for. But where does that tie into the grand scheme of story arc and storytelling, you know what I mean? Now anyway, with that out of the way, what I mean by a tapestry is we see all these scars, and Johns and Fabuk really focus on Nightfall. So we see the spinal surgery, Bane. burn from the Joker, or I'm sorry, the Riddler, claws from Catwoman. This book does not want to stay open. It keeps wanting to flop close on me. And we see bites from Killer Croc, burns and pitchforks from the Scarecrow, gunshots from the Joker, and it just goes on, and it really sets up the tone. I don't want to give away each panel because it's just absolutely beautiful. And then we start to see the the madness laugh. Try to think of Mark Hamill's laugh in your head because I can't do it. But what I like here is, okay, we kind of go back through the origin, which is still tragic, but just a little overdone. Movies, any type of media, the story of his parents, which it sets up what Batman is, but kind of going back to it just kind of gets a little tiresome. But what's interesting is the way that Jeff Jones connects it. So you kind of go through it, and then we get these panels here where we see a young Bruce Wayne, and it says the wound, or this wound, is deeper than the others. It's going to leave another scar, not that you'd notice. So Alfred obviously is talking about the stab from the Penguin. But in terms of subtext, they're connecting Bruce's original trauma with now, and it's just really interesting. Now there's a broadcast that goes on and talks about Joker sightings, and what I like is each time we go through these characters, one says the criminal, and then we get to Barbara. And what's interesting is it says, do you have an uncontrollable urge to move your legs? Do you have difficulty standing still and trouble sleeping? So she's at the gym on the treadmill. And they're talking about restless leg syndrome. So, okay, an ad, whatever. And then, of course, I like the way it kind of flies through all the, what is it called? Side effects, which I know it's a little crass. But if you guys have ever seen the Oblongs, there's one where they were talking about testing on dogs or whatever. And one of the family's dogs gets taken to this test lab. And we want our dog back. And the guy's like, hey, I was able to get his butt to stop leaking. What more do you want from me? So every time I hear those side effects, I'm always looking out for butt leaking. It's just something that sticks with you. Now anyway, crass aside, you just see Barbara, as she's watching this ad, she's running and running and running, and she's pumping, and you see the determination in her face. And then they go on to talk about the murder of this comedian by the Joker, and the same night as the one we were just talking about a moment ago. And this guy says, damn, she broke another one. Because she has to train her body to peak physical performance like Batman. She burns out the treadmill. Now, back to the restless leg syndrome thing. Because it's the Joker, it's kind of like one of those trigger things where it kind of gives you a little bit of PTSD, and she's determined. And so it starts to mess with her. She kind of goes into the zone. And you kind of see the look on her face. And so we follow her into the shower. And just like with Batman, you see her scars. So you see from the Killing Joke where the bullet went in. You see when he answered the door in his Hawaiian shirt. And she's like, why are you doing this? To prove a point. Here's to crime. So you see how the Joker continues to leave a mark on each of the Bat family and how it messes with them psychologically. And just, it's interesting to use scars to tell that story that way. And just kind of shows, you compare between the scars, the looks on their face, and how it affects them, some on their daily lives, like Babs here. And it says, to the comedian. And then, of course, we can't round it out without Jason. So you see the Red Hoods in this graveyard plummeting the Joker's goons to death. Now, what's kind of interesting is they're able to get his helmet off. No more helmet. Let's crack that head open. And so, for book here, and the art team, Brad Anderson, everyone, goes through to viciously recreate the Death in the Family look, which, whew, no matter how many times you've read that series or seen a rendition of it, whew, it's still intense. Speaking of which, if you want an intense recreation of it, not against Jason, but against one of his goons. Go read John Carpenter's Joker #1 from Year of the Villain. Oh, the paneling that they do to recreate that scene, it hits you pretty hard. I have done a review on it, so make sure to check it out after you've checked this video out. So I like how they use the words here, crack open his head, and it starts to trigger memories. Same thing how when Babs touches the scar on her stomach, and we go back to the Killing Joke, or how we see all the scars from Batman, and we just see this long history of the repercussions of him being Batman. Now, Jason again says, "Where's the Joker?" I'm like, "We don't know." I figured you assholes wouldn't know, but I needed to stretch my legs. 3. The Clown. So now, after we get all that interesting build-up, and we kind of see where our heroes are, we see a corpse that looks like the original Red Hood, which I can't remember where the first appearance of the very, very first Red Hood was. I know Joker's first appearance was Batman #1 way back when, but there was a story, I can't remember if it was before or after. No, it was after, because Joker goes back to talk about how he was originally the Red Hood. If you guys can't remember, I think it was in Detective Comics. I'm not sure. Let me know down in the comments. But again, I like the callback here. And so we see Bullock, Jim, everyone talking about everything going on from the crime, the mass murder on the Maxon family, the murdering of the comedian, and then these gentlemen here at Ace Chemicals. Now, what's interesting here is everyone's like, "Oh, this has to be the original Joker because this is where it all started for him." And so Harvey's like, "Batman, can you ID these guys?" And so, of course, you get that horrific look of the Joker toxin. But we finally get to hear some backstory on what it does to the body. Their fingerprints will have been burned off by the chemicals that bleach their skin. Those same chemicals will corrupt any DNA testing done. And nerve damage, their facial muscles have broken their jaws into smiles, making matching dental records nearly impossible. Like the Joker, they're unidentifiable. That's intense, because regardless of what type of lives these people led, they're nameless bodies now. So it's just... whew. Now something happens. And so Batman and Barbara are following the ambulance to make sure that one of the victims makes it. And I like how Bruce actually teases, he goes, he's talking to Batgirl, he goes, "Your father gave me a disapproving look tonight. Does he know you're Batgirl?" Of course not. And so she says, "Whenever the Joker is involved, we all prepare for the worst. We've been through the worst. What kind of look do you expect?" So it shows how when the Joker comes to town, what it does to Gotham and the ramifications. Now, Red Hood is in the ambulance. This gets really interesting there, because you're just like, oh boy. And you can kind of see how Jason sort of goes half-cocked compared to Batman, where he's more calculated, and Barbara's kind of in the same thing where she tries to follow Bruce more than Jason does. But again, those two have a very rocky relationship because of what happened and just his temperament before he became Robin, etc., and so forth. Now, at the Ace Chemicals, a semi was stolen. I don't want to give away everything, but what I like here is we see it roll up. We kind of get a first-person view, so we don't know where we're being taken. Again, that POV feeling of where you don't have any control. You're just stuck in the eyes of a madman. And you see, he's like, whew, what a life. And this very much looks like the cabin from, what's that movie? Evil Dead. I was like, wait a minute, I'm drawing a blank. So, without giving away, there's some really awesome back and forth dialogue that I don't want to give away. But we see this Joker here. And he said, "So, boss, what are we going to do tonight?" And I was waiting for him to say the same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world. Which, it's close. He goes, "What we always do. We try to make a better Joker." So here's where we're introduced to the 3 Jokers. And the way they talk and banter back and forth, you can see it's like almost the same guy, they're talking. So you're like, wait a minute, are these alternate dimensions? Are these clones? what's going on? And you're not given a whole lot of information, and I don't want to give any more of that away. Now, eventually, a lot of the detective work leads them to this aqueduct place, and you see that the tanks have been filled with Joker fish and a Joker shark. Now, I'm wondering here, because the Joker fish were first introduced back in Detective Comics 475, and then the shark, this is new, which I always love when they can introduce something new with an old idea. But I wonder if the shark is a nod back to, Batman 251, which was Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, where one of Joker's grand hurrahs is to drop someone into a shark tank, but in this case here, it's sort of intensified. And then we get Gaggy. Gaggy, I think, showed up around Batman 186. And he's like the Joker. He once called him his court jester. So you're starting to see that Jeff Johns really starts to go and pull out some of the old stuff from like the Silver Age and whatnot. But what I like here is Jeff Johns really kind of, in a sense, puts it to an end, because here comes Jaws at the hands of the Red Hood. And I just love that terrifying. It doesn't get too graphic, which you'd think that because this is a black label they would have. But gore, just like in horror films, is only used to really express something or intensify a moment. This is all you need. Big, scary Sharknado coming at you, Gaggy's eyes looking on. And horror, great artwork there. That's how you let the art drive the narrative. You know what I mean? Now, I don't really want to give away any more of the story, but there is one thing I want to go over. Let me find it. I don't want to spoil too much, because there is a panel in here where I looked at it and I went, oh my God. And it took me by surprise because I was not expecting it. But needless to say, Jason sits here and he goes, when's the last time you missed Barbara? And we see a batarang hanging in the wall. We see blood at her feet to kind of symbolize there's blood on your hands too. And she goes, screw you, Jason. Because again, what happens and how... Oh, another thing real quick that I can kind of see where Johns is going is, if memory serves correctly, but when you look at... I think it's on all printings of The Killing Joke. I'm not 100%. But they had that there and kind of showing how they're both two sides of the same coin, but in this case it's a card. It's like the King and the Joker. Symbolism. But this was a good read. I was not bored whatsoever. There's a lot of really cool throwbacks to original stories, and it really starts to kind of muddle the continuity, because people are like, you know, there's one time where Jason's like, I hope this is right. You know, this looks like the Joker, but his laugh's off, or his facial features, he looks too skinny. So you're just wondering, what in the world is going on? So even though this took 4 years to come out, was not bored, was very much engaged. Very much, if you're a Batman fan, you're going to catch little things. You're just like, hey. And if you're a new reader, you're going to get enough information that you're going to enjoy it. And that's, I can't remember who said it, but they said that whenever you jump on whatever issue it may be, you should be able to jump on and at least understand what's going on, and enough to want to go back and read and then continue forward. Jeff Johns does this with the Three Jokers. So if you've enjoyed this comic book, y'all, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and see if they have this series in stock. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you can possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little Jokerfish bell next to subscribe. That way, as we continue to upload content, you guys can come to the channel. And we love to have a dialogue with y'all and hear your feedback down in the comments below, or on our social media pages, which I will make sure to leave the links down in the description below. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.